Hello, everybody. Denisse here. Jeff, Marlene, Gabby, Molly, and Nienke present. Welcome you guys to our Alejandra Casado in Red program 158. In this opportunity, we are going to be dealing with Lap 8. Lap 8 of 2026 and all of the material that Alejandra presented in the beginning of the lap. As we can see here, we have in lap 8, we have gone in this transition from the lap 8 no, not lap 8, sorry, line 8 of the periodic table of elements, which ends with Oganesson, as we can see right here, and then going to Toganesson, which is 190. And we're going to talk about this later because it is a part of what the program is about. So right now in this day, we are going over the material. It is the 8th of May. So we know that 5 with 8 is related to mind, So in the end of lap 8, the fact that it closes with the 8th of the 5th, it is like the administration of the octave, is just so precise, right? So here we are today, 739,746. 46 is a concept that is related to the boundary or the frontier of something. So another high synchronization here that we can see here in the solar day. It is like a boundary, a frontier that it is the solar day is signalizing a frontier, specifically on the last day of lap 8, which I relate to what Jeff was asking about earlier, this transition between lap 8 and lap 9 and the relation this might have with the conflict that the United States has created with Iran, which is code 98. Well, the United States and Israel. Yes? Anybody wanted to? No? Oh, okay. All right. So Ali begins talking because another important thing that happened in lap 8 was that we went through this portal or this really important date that we know of as the day 118 of the year, which is the 28th of April. If you guys remember that Alejandra spoke about this day I think she was speaking about this day and projecting onto this day since like the end of last year, I think. And it is a very important day because she named this day a derivation. And I think that the reason for the derivation is because it is as if we have charged all of the elements. Because we are going through from day 1 of the year, which is hydrogen, all the way to 118, which is Oganesson. So we are the fact that we are going one by one through all of those spaces in the table, and then by the time we are in 118, it is like some kind of archive is charged, it's closed, and we are moving towards a shift in the mechanism of materialization of this specific entorno, which is what the table represents, this matrix of materialization inside the solar local area. Because every star is going to have a different code of materialization. Okay, so for us this is like the local, because we have the clave de sol, we're going to have this local access to the codification of this specific entorno particularly. So this is the reason why the 28th of April is so important. Okay, so here she's talking about how this field has been injected like wildly with occurrences that are foreign to the solar code, that are not local, right? But the fact that these in what we call I say interferences because from the perspective of third dimension, these are interferences. But from the fifth dimension observer, these things are signalizers of what needs to be improved in the code. Okay, so this is what has happened. What the solar consciousness is doing now is that it is recovering and doing this amazing like a I forget that word. Just a radar, like a scanning of all of those errors in its code, so that those errors could be improved, of course. So that's what she's saying about here. And then she talks, of course, in all of the programs, she talks a lot about the first level of the table, which is the level of the hydrogen. So we have hydrogen on the left, and we have helium on the right. On the left, we have helium, and it's on the line of the most reactive elements we have. So it is taking the space of the first element of the table, and we know that position, the position that it has on the table. And then on the other end, we have helium. So we have the H, but we also have the E. The E, what does the E represent? The E is going to represent the administration of that octave. H is 8. The H of the hydrogen. And then Alice says, HE is going to be kind of like the worker of hydrogen, the part that administrates the consciousness of the hydrogen. Okay. That's what she talks about in relation to the level 1 of the table. So when we are saying that, when she talks about the derivation, she talks also about the fact that when we reach day 118, it is as if that line, that first level of the table, is fully charged. Why? Because we're charging it from level 8. So we are going through level 8, but all of that is connected. Yeah? So she's saying level 1 is fully charged. Now, another important thing is that level 1, I'm going to share the table instead because I think that it'll help you a bit better. You can see it here, right? You can see the table or no? Oh, no, I haven't shared it yet. Here. So here we have level 1. Before it is important that we always keep like in our archives, in the back of our minds, the way the table was before. Remember that all of this, like a big part of this, a big chunk, was placed under the table. It was not unified. And they said that it was for, aesthetic purposes. But all of these things, when we look at those things from the perspective of the solar code, is like, no, I don't think it was because of that. So this integration and this big update and all of the things that we know that we've been following, that have been happening with the table, we now find ourselves, and we can see level 1 of the table is looking like this. So we have the 30 spaces of the promise of Toganeson. I thought this program was brilliant because she explains with such great detail what the promises are. So I think we're going to be understanding a lot more about the promises in this mission. But what she's saying also is that in level 1, it was where the interferences used to come through because they did not find any resistance. It is as if it was like wide open, like the doors were wide open. There was no filter, there was no registration. That's why Ali also talks a lot about the 8th orbital of the solar system, which is related to the solar, what was it, like civil registry of the solar system. This has to do with all of that. Like all of these things were not happening. There were so many vacant spaces when we're talking about multidimensional administration. There were a lot of problems with the administration of the solar codification at different scales. So what do we see? What's happening to all of the codes that begin with 5? It's a complete mess. The administration of those codes is a complete mess. Specifically, and other codes too, of course. But I'm talking about the ones that begin with 5 because the function of the administrator, if we look at it with the solar perspective, it wasn't doing very well from the solar codification. So yeah, that's in relation to the 28th of April and the level 1, which is hydrogen, helium, and the 30 spaces of the promises, which she explains a lot more later. Now, she begins speaking from, she uses this like to explain the perspective from a fifth dimensional observer, the difference from what that would be, and a third dimensional observer. An observer that is from the fifth dimension and an observer that is from the third dimension. And she uses the example of how a lot of people interpret that this is just a game. This is a game, right? This is a game, so I can go out and get my gun and I can go out and kill everybody because this is just a game. Now, what happens is that from the perspective of the fifth dimension has no restrictions because it's something that is outside of existence. It has complete freedom, but it also doesn't have existence. That's why it can have an absolute freedom. Yes? Because it doesn't have existence. It doesn't need those restrictions. Existence, for it to be able to exist, needs restrictions and needs frames, and those frames need to be respected, because if we don't respect those frames, then existence ceases to exist. Now, the problem here is that if there's a fifth dimensional observer that does not, because there's all kinds of fifth dimensional observers, okay? There's going to be fifth dimensional observers that their entertainment is going to be looking for structures that to vulnerate, to trespass. That's going to be their entertainment, because a fifth dimensional observer, the only thing that it can do is that it can create or destroy. So if it is not entertained creating, it's gonna be looking for entertainment destroying. Now, there's other kinds of fifth dimensional observers that are gonna have these an amazing multi-dimensional infrastructure and understanding of the mechanisms of the universe. Okay, so there are different kinds of fifth dimensional observers. Now, this is important because the fact that this update with the table and the spaces of the promises, what does that do? It creates an interface between matter and antimatter. So those fifth dimensional observers are going to find out a resistance. It is as if it's not going to be that easy to vulnerate the structure. But they're always going to be looking for little holes through which they can vulnerate the structure. But the solar consciousness is going to take that to create the improvements necessary. That's why we talk also about scalar growth. Scalar growth means that the structures are going to be becoming more and more complex because the architects want to improve in the construction of multidimensional structures. So because the structures are always going to be improving, they're going to be dynamic, these interferences are always going to be there because it's also just the mechanisms of the expressed universe, yes. But if we take it from the solar perspective, we're going to be like, okay, we're going to take interference as a sport. It's not going to be our souls on the line anymore, hopefully, if we do this right. If we achieve this transition between express universe and civilized express universe, where we have the resources first, and then the challenges. Express universe is challenges first, and the law of the jungle. And the big guy eats the small guy, and the strong guy smashes the weak guy. No, in the civilized express universe, it's the other way around. It's the big guy protects the small guy, and the
Yeah.
strong guy helps the weak guy get stronger.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So here she talks about this notion of the game. Okay, from a fifth dimensional perspective, okay, it's a game. Now, what kind of fifth dimensional observer are we dealing with? Am I dealing with a fifth dimensional observer that is busy constructing and creating improvements of the game? Or am I dealing with an observer that is only interested in destroying and vulnerating the structure? Yes, there's going to be all kinds, there's going to be like between those two, there's going to be different kinds of fifth dimensional observers. But the thing here is understanding that there's now going to be an interface between matter and antimatter that's going to be like a filter. Not only a filter, it has so many other functions, but it's going to be a resistance, and it's not going to be as easy to vulnerate as it was before. Okay. So if we assume ourselves as responsible for the third dimension, if we as a fifth dimensional observer, if I am recognizing constantly and nourishing this fifth dimensional observer, and I am busy creating improvements in the third dimension, and if I am able to assume myself as responsible for the third dimension, then we start becoming interested in learning to improve the quality of the game, not destroying the structures that allow the game to be. But yes, we want to look for the faults and the vulnerabilities of the structure, but not to make it collapse, but to improve it. So it is a completely different perspective. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it would be. Do you guys prefer the table, or do you
Oh,
prefer the
I was just
document?
checking if you were speaking to the document, just to let you know that what's still on the screen in case you
It
didn't
doesn't.
notice.
It doesn't make a much of a difference. What
Okay.
do you guys prefer? Do you prefer the table? Because we talk a lot about the table, so it's like
Yes, I like
visually
the
I saw the
table.
table. Okay.
the table.
Me
Yeah,
too.
we don't
Table.
need the document really, because I use it as like the pinpoint what I talk about, but we don't really need it. Okay. So yeah, this I thought this was really interesting. Like this whole thing that started with the situation with the fifth dimensional observer. So I thought it was really interesting. So basically, it's like, okay, fifth dimensional observer is going to be busy destroying or creating. What's it going to be? Um, okay, so she also talks about this. Um, okay, no, here I'm going to share. I'm going to share the document so you guys can see. She talks about the solar days, and we've been talking about this for a while since this began, of course, and it was in the end of 2025, which is the presence of 396 inside the solar day. So the first time that we find this convergence is on the 13th of December, like prior to beginning the Ring of Fire. So we begin going through this specific frequency in the solar code. What is this? What does this mean? It means a validation of a solar update of apparatus 396. Yeah. And from this end on, all the way to the 22nd of March of 2026, which is solar day 739699. What does that mean? The update has been completed. Yes. So it begins and there's a completed update, which takes us to the 23rd of March of 2026, solar day 739700. So here we're talking about 39. We can see 39 inside 77. What does that mean? There is an update inside the solar consciousness. There is an update, a conscious update inside the solar perspective. Okay? We can read it as something like that. So from here, that's where we are right now. We are in 739746. Yes? But what we're pointing out here is the relation, the specific frequency in the solar code that had this 396 in its solar days. So here she makes a little bit of an explanation about, again, about the apparatus 396. And it has to do with the perception. Okay. When we're talking about the imaginary aspect, it's going to be dynamic. Yes, because it has no restrictions. So in order for an imaginary occurrence to be able to densify and materialize in a specific material entorno, it needs to be frozen in a way. Yes? So that's where we have estático y dinámico. Yes? Static and dynamic. In Spanish, we know this. Estático adds up to 96, dinámico to 69. So if we want an occurrence that is dynamic to materialize and have a third dimensional development and process and cycle, we need to make it static. Okay, so that's what she's saying, Alejandra, here in relation to apparatus 396. She's saying it is the creation of a static perception of the imaginary that it has to do with when the particle enters the unified field, there is this thing that needs to be frozen, and whatever is frozen becomes part of the collective programmation. Yes? Programming. Because why? Because we are collective. Yes, we are part of a collective. So every occurrence that enters the field affects the field, and the field affects every single occurrence existing inside the field, because we are all interacting in a collective area. Okay, so this is the explanation that she makes in this emission in relation to the apparatus 396. Okay, so again, the 10 days that are missing in lap 18 of 1582 take this challenge to another level. Why? Because of all of the occurrences that have injected themselves in here. Okay, because of the vulneration. So everything that is in the field is affecting everybody. Okay. Okay. Now, back. We are still in the little box that's related to 396. In 3, we record the experiences. In 6, we record the programs. What are the programs? They are the mechanism through which the meaning of the experiences is decodified or decoded. So in 3, we record. What do we record? The programs. What are the programs? They are the mechanism through which we decodify the meaning of existence. But what happened? 396. Who made that update? It was an external source. someone else made the update. What happened? The update was not collective. What happened? Everybody recorded their own programs according to whatever they wanted, and those recordings were not convergent. So when these programs started to be developed and executed, that's why we are dealing with all of these things, because the update of 396 was not collective, was not local. Everybody recorded what they wanted to record in the field. Everybody's developing whatever they want to develop. It is not collective. And we can, like, if we look very closely, a lot of the problems have to do with, like, we can see a lot of people just focused on their own particular gain. Yes, particular interests. There's a lot of people that really don't care about the collective. And this is the reason why, okay? Apparatus 396 and year 1582 is year asimila of aparato 396. Okay, here is a picture. I don't know if you guys had ever seen it. This is a picture of a banner that Alejandra placed in Córdoba, capital. Oh, Nienke, we should go there. We should go there when we go to Córdoba. Because Nienke and I are going to Córdoba soon. Okay. So this specific crossroad of a road was placed by this banner was placed by Alejandra on the 29th of September of 2012. Yes. And she talks about this, about the reason why. And you know, if we hyper condense it, it all comes down to year 5775. Okay? That's why we can see 5775 and we can see year 2014. Why is the reason for that connection? We know that 3760 is the difference, is the interface between 2014 and 5775. And we use that interface, that 3760 interface, which is 3 on the left, 0 on the right, and the foundational pattern in the center, 7-6. Okay, so base 30 and the foundational pattern in the center. This is an interface that connects us from one year to another year. In the past, this was related to the Jewish year, but now this has been nativized. So now we say base 30 containing the foundational pattern 7-6, okay? So this is the connection from year 2014 to year 5775. And of course it has to do, what is 5775? How do we read that when we look at the code of that? We read it as the administration of the gravitational logic, or the gravitational logic, or the interpreter. Yes? Okay. Another way that she reads it is the gravitational, there's like a gravitational logic that is being confronted. 5757. There's a confrontation of a gravitational logic. So because of that confrontation, one needs full consciousness inside the structure. Because when we're talking about a gravitational logic, we are talking about a specific entorno. Okay? So this confrontation requires full consciousness inside the content and full consciousness in the frames of that content. That is like the reading of 5775. So she said in 2014 she wanted to leave a track that was a clue that would be able to be read, that track, so that track could be able to be read in the future. Yes, so this is why Alejandra placed this banner, and this was 12 years ago. Now we are looking at this at this mark that she left 12 years ago, we are able to look at it now with the table and with all of the things that happened in 12 years. And she said, 12 years ago, I didn't have the data. Because the logic was first. The data started to come later. And what is the data that she didn't have is the relation between 2026 and 1582, 444. Yes, we are looking at this with this perspective in year 2026 and the connection that 2026 has with 1582. And then, all of this is connected because we have been talking about apparatus 396 and apparatus 396 being in the solar frequency and all of those things. That's where she opens so many things that, because it's so much, maybe sometimes it's hard to connect all the dots, but all of the things that she talks about are connected. Okay, so what is 444? This is another thing that she talks a lot about in the program, and it is like brilliant. Because it has to do with every particle's capacity to map out, to be connected to that aspect that has a registration of all of the particles that are manifested inside the unified field. Okay, so 444 has to do with all of our destinations together. Yes, and they have to converge, because if our destinations or our destinies don't converge, we burst the container. Yes, our destinies have to converge. Okay, so each occurrence is going to have a place inside the unified field. Each occurrence is going to be recording the program that they're going to develop inside the specific field. And those programs affect all of us. Okay? Now, in order for me to have a better functioning inside the unified field, what do I need? I need to have in my radar, I need to have the biggest map that I can and that I'm able to do of all of those occurrences that are inside the unified field, so that when I am experimenting or functioning inside the field, I have great anticipation and synchronization. So the bias or the preference, when it is applied inside the unified field, the bias has to do with everything that is within my reach. The radar has to do with all of the things that are not within my reach. So I'm going to be sensing the things that are not within my reach, they're going to be providing me with an anticipatory signals, so that all the things that are within my reach in the area of my preference, I'm going to become really precise in my functioning inside the field. Yes? So what Ale talks about here is that every particle is going to have access to a quantum computer that's going to allow us to map out or be in contact in some way with all of the particles that are implemented in the unified field. But that's in relation to the unified field. Yes? But then there's another area of our antenna that we are calling the antenna of the universe. So that is outside of the unified field. That's what we call the y-axis. The area of the member of the universe and the area of the member of the species. And those two things need to be working to the unison.
Wow.
Cool, huh? I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
Let's take a break.
Oh my
10-minute
God.
break. Okay, see you in a little bit. Okay, we are back. So we were saying about this thing with the y-axis is where the member of the species is anchored. The member of the species is anchored inside a specific entorno, and that entorno has a codification, and that codification has many different gravitational scales. Okay. we have been working and enabling level 8 of the table of elements. Because if we didn't do that and we left it as it was before, as it is socially, where Francio is on the 7th level, then we would continue to be the fun, the amusement park of all of these cosmic observers as a species of, as a kind of like an experiment, and just pushing the buttons to see how much we can take before we self-destruct. The thing is that the source does not have good or evil. It has freedom because it doesn't have existence and it doesn't have any frames, right? So the non-physical universe, what it does is that it enables possibilities, but it doesn't judge the possibilities. Everything that has to do with judgment is related directly to the secondary unfoldment. Yeah. So the secondary unfoldment is what provides containment to a specific data. It is like the borders, of course, of a reality. So it is the secondary unfoldment, according to the quality of its structures, is going to be deciding whether or not an occurrence is going to materialize. But it is the responsibility of particular consciousnesses. Particular consciousnesses are the ones that are in charge of the secondary unfoldment. Particular consciousnesses are the ones that are in charge of the secondary unfoldment. So here Alejandra talks about, she just makes a little side note that she says that it's really hard for her to look back to older videos of herself or like previous events and stuff, because it is really hard for her to tolerate that level of imprecision. She wasn't as precise as she is today, of course. And I can understand that because, for example, when I am doing a live emission, I am doing the best I can with the resources I have in the present. But the minute that is over and I close the computer and I go on, what do? I immediately go back and look at all of the improvements. So she has all of the things that could have been done better or something like that. So she says that this happens to her constantly, and like when an event is over and she closes the event, like on the next day immediately, she starts to think of all the improvements of that event. So here she's saying that is the reason why like it's so hard for her to look back and stuff, but that she is working on that because now she needs to be more in contact with the third dimension. Like she needs to be more in the third dimension, and in the third dimension we need that. Yes, we need that linearity, and we need to enable a more ample tolerance to the margin of error, to the margins of error of the third dimension, because the third dimension is inherently created for errors. Okay. Here she shows us lap 8, not 18, lap 8 of year 1582. And of course, this is in relation to everything that we said, like the connection between 2026 and 1582, and specifically in lap 8. So everything is connected, like we said. And what we can see here in the solar days, this is like the finding that Alejandra presents. I don't know if she has done this before. I don't think so. But what she presents here is the solar days. The solar days of every position in lap 8 of year 1582, which is 5775. All of them begin with 5775, which is just crazy. It's just crazy. Okay. So I think this finding is what just kick-started everything else that we have been talking about since the beginning of the emission. But we can see that here, right? Now, how does she interpret this here? Because the first day of lap 8 of 1582 is 5775. 7-3. And we know that 7-3-3-7 has to do with liberty and frames. Now, here, what we can assign to this specific solar date, it is like the determination of the frame inside which we're going to have that liberty inside existence. So it sounds like a paradox. The frame of liberty. But this is why it's so important for us to construct our consciousness at different levels. Because if we don't have that, this is what happens with fifth dimensional observers, where they interpret that they have the freedom, like I am free, I am free, I am free to do whatever I want, freedom, freedom, freedom. Okay, yes, freedom, but we are sharing a collective space. And this collective space has restrictions and has parameters and has consensus. We need to share and we need to converge and we need to respect those structures. So yes, I'm going to have freedom, but I have to respect the frames inside the entorno in which I am being implemented. I can't just do whatever I want, because if I'm doing whatever I want, I am confusing antimatter with matter. I am confusing a particle, an imaginary particle, with a member of the species. It is not the same thing at all. Okay, so 73 is going to provide us with this liberty. 37 is going to provide us with the frame, and it's going to be equal to restriction. And restriction is inherent to secondary unfoldment. Liberty, absolute liberty, is inherent to primary. Okay, primary unfoldment. So here she just, yeah, anybody want to?
Yeah, just a question on this. I'm just looking at the lap 8 chart, and here, I might turn my camera on. Is this just an example for illustration, or are we starting to count the solar days using the 5775? In
I
other
don't
words,
think I
that
understand. No, I don't understand what you
okay?
mean.
So there was the update. What was it from March 23rd? Right, we're saying it's like kind of a reconnection, right?
Oh yeah, no. We're not counting. No.
No, so
That is
so this is
that is
just
a
an
diff
example. This is just an
it
example.
it's a different thing. Like when we're talking about the solar days here. These
Yes,
we're talking about all of the solar days that we are coming out of that had 396 inside the frequency.
right.
Yes. This is in 2025, 2026. This
Yeah.
is in the solar days, right? But here we are looking at the solar days of lap 8 of 1582.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed the
Yeah,
year. Got it. Got it.
the year.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, don't worry. Okay, so here what she does is that she selects a couple of days, like a couple of dates and solar days. So day 1, we just talked about that. And day 3, we have day 3 of lap 8 of 1582. We have 577575. So what do we see here? The last 3 digits of that solar day is 575. And we know that secular years are very important for the solar codification. So apparatus 575 is the apparatus where we have a secular year. And that secular year is year 2300. Yes, 2300. Yes. So we can see that there. And then she points out, of course, the 28th of April, which falls on lap 8, which is right here. And the last day of the lap, we have solar day 577588. We know that 88 is protocol of chaos and control. So it is very interesting to see this. So these metrics that we are looking at right now are 444 years ago. Like on this, specifically today. So today, Alejandra recorded that program on the first day of the lap. We are recording this one on the last. So the last day of lap 8 today is 444 exact years from this solar day. Okay? Wow. Wow! That's pretty cool. Okay. Now Alejandra says, what do we have to do with all of this? Nothing. Just follow the reasoning, follow the logic of the thing, and then allow other dimensions that are going to use this for the flow of signals. So the only thing that we have to do, we know this, follow, reason, and allow it to migrate to other dimensions. This is a very broad interpretation of apparatus 507. Okay. Apparatus 507 is a protocol that the star itself needs to fulfill. It is like a demand that the star itself needs to fulfill because it is occurring. It's in the present for the star. Present time. We can't say present star, but present time for the star because the star has no time. But like for us, it's the present time. It is like an execution inside this time cycle of this specific framework frame of the code. So for the star, this segment demands a specific thing. So what it has to do, the relation that it has, that the solar consciousness has with apparatus 507, or the demand that it has, is that there is a capacity to incorporate solar consciousness, an incorporation of solar consciousness to the gravitational logic, so that there is an ability to receive anticipation, to be able to neutralize any kind of touching or manipulation, attempt of manipulation to the gravitational logic that we are using here in the last step, in the last level of density. Incorporating solar consciousness so that we are able to receive anticipation, so that we are able to neutralize any attempt of manipulation. Okay? So she talks about, again, about level 7 and level 8, right? We did this level 8 as a kind of reservoir, so that we are able to lodge ourselves there and receive all the anticipations in antimatter. Yes, that's why all the numbers in level 7 are in negative, because there's a connection to the antimatter inside the matter, so that we're able to have anticipation there before, like an area of reception of signals, and also attempts of manipulation. Okay. Here she mentions that from video 1, in the first video of Alejandra, the first video that she presented, there was a high level of like a lot of synthesis. There was like what she presented was very synthetic, very compressed, of course, and very symbolic. But she's saying here it is not as if the symbolic area is not included. It is included, but it is included as another layer. It is not included as the only layer. So here she mentions that, like, on the first videos there was a high level of symbolism because there was no other choice. But for her, it was never symbolic, okay? Maybe for the people receiving it at that moment, it was very symbolic, but for her, it was never symbolic. It was highly technical. It is just that she didn't have the necessary infrastructure to transfer it at a highly technical level. So here's that's what she explained here. All of the dimensions are inventions of the subatomic scale, which means that the third dimension is an invention of the subatomic scale. Yes. And those dimensions are financed inside a system that is reproducing those dimensions. And because we are inside those dimensions, then we interpret that this is real life. Okay. So here, there's a question here, and she says, if you are taking your main identity, you're putting your main identity into something that does not correspond to the source, meaning I am assigning my primary identity in whatever material aspect of existence I like the best, and that's what I identify with. If that doesn't correspond with the source, then why would the source assist you? And I've been reasoning a lot with this because I had a conversation that had to do with values and like problems with financiation. But I'm not talking directly about money. I'm talking about like financiation of existence. Yes. So why would the source finance me if my purpose, my personal purpose here in the last level of densification, is not aligned with the original purpose? Why would the source finance me? Of course, it's not going to finance me. So my interpretation is that a lot of the problems with value are directly related with conflicts with purpose. Because if I have a highly individualistic purpose, I don't think the source is going to be very good at financing. Yes. I mean, of course, there's other kinds of occurrences inside the field that have more like all the people that accumulate, right? I saw a piece of data recently that said that we have close to 3,500 billionaires in the world. Now, these people probably have Ali explained that they were like they are like just expressions of the express universe, yes, and they are doing inside the field whatever the structure allows them to do. The only thing that they're doing is that they are expressing the quality of the codification of the structure. Okay. But when we talk about financiation, like just in more regular people, problems with financiation, it has to do with a conflict of purpose. Yes, so my purpose needs to be aligned with the purpose of the source. If not, why would the source assist me? And same thing with the identity. If I am not identifying myself as imaginary, primarily imaginary, I am identifying myself as primarily material, which is an aberration for the creator of the third dimension, which is the subatomic field. Of course, there's like a really deep identity conflict. So we have a value conflict, we have a purpose conflict, and we have an identity conflict. Yeah. And the only way that we can solve these things, really solve them and improve them structurally, is with multidimensional consciousness. We can't make an attempt into improving these things or bettering the structure from the third dimension. Of course not. So the member of the universe and the member of the species. The member of the universe is completely not physical, and the member of the species is completely physical, but they have to be working together at this point. Here she talks again about the derivation of the 28th of April, and here's where she talks about this thing with the quantum computer, that every particle is gonna, if we have this situation, this concept of the primary unfolded properly worked. Okay, so if we have that, then we're gonna have access to this part of the radar. Yes, and we're gonna have an anticipatory system. Okay. The thing is that we are on a highly evolutionary stage at all levels, from the solar level to the member of the species. Highly evolutionary stage. So for this reason, there is so much lateral influence so that this is not, so that this doesn't happen, okay? There's a lot of influence that wants to prevent this evolution to happen. Okay, lap 18, we have, here we can see the missing days and how Alejandra assigned the specific spaces that correspond, that are aligned to lap 18 from the table. We have seen this before. We're not gonna get too much into the details, but mainly what she talks about here is that the fact that these specific points in the structure were vulnerated. Is that a word? Vulnerated, I don't think so. Trespassed or manipulated, made it very difficult for us to assimilate everything that has occurred. Yes, it is as if our capacity to assimilate was blocked. Okay, so that is basically the most important thing that we can grab from this complex situation in the structure. The thing is that we need specific structures like this. This is a structure that help us soften the perception of all of the things that are arriving. Because she says, what is happening here, we're going to call it a quantum leap. Socially, it's going to be called quantum leap. And she says, I hate that word. I hate using that word. But I know that if I don't use this word, no one, they're not going to understand, because there is no other way to say it. So she is like assuming this margin of error of the third dimension, and she's using this word and trying to use this word. So she's saying we are in the face of a quantum leap. Yes, and a very evolutionary leap in this specific moment. So what we have, this repair in lap 18 of 1582, is part of the structure that is going to allow us to soften the perception and assimilate what is happening. What is happening and what has happened. Okay? So this is the reason why before we experience this leap, the frequency of destruction is at its fullest. That's what's happening. Okay, here she makes a really interesting clarification in relation to the reactives. I thought it was very useful. And she says that there's many dimensions working to achieve a control of the reactives, but we cannot just eliminate all of the reactives, because the flow of signals needs to continue to be open. And we cannot be just like locked in a little box without any reactives, without any like, you know, external stimulations. Because if we were like that, if we were like that, we would have no capacity to evolve. So we cannot eliminate all of the reactives. We need them. The thing is that we're only going to be keeping what's necessary so that the flow of signals can keep active. We need to be able to look at the fault, at the defect. We need to be able to look at the mechanisms that are supporting the infrastructure, and look for the opportunities of improvements. Okay, so the reactives are going to be very much calmed down, but not completely, because we still need them. I thought that it was very like clarifying. Okay, in relation to the third dimension is created for failing. Yes, for the expression of the failings of the code, so that the code can be improved. It was never so clear. It was never so clear. When Alejandra explained something, she's like, people ask like, why didn't you say this before? Like, you should have said this in the beginning. Okay, the third dimension is created for the fault. So when the code improves, then we're going to be noticing, I don't know if you got, if this has already happened to you. I can sense it has happened for me. There's more tolerance for more margins of error. Yes, because we are understanding what the third dimension is about. Okay, the fifth dimension is entertained constructing or destructing or destroying. So if the fifth dimensional observer is not taken care of, yes, if we're not using it consciously, positioning our observer there, understanding what it is, then it's gonna be searching for something to break, because it has no moral code, and it is about constructing or destroying. That is like its nature. Yes, the thing is that if it is a fifth dimensional observer that is more evolved, because there's going to be fifth dimensional observers without evolutionary option and fifth dimensional observers with evolutionary option. Okay, so if we're talking about a fifth dimensional observer with evolutionary option, then it can decide to enter inside a moral code and respect it, because it knows why it needs to be respected. But we're talking about an evolved fifth dimensional observer. Okay, so if it's deciding for a moral code and it's deciding to enter in it, in that structure, and respect it and work within those restrictions because it understands why, then there's going to be limitations, and it's going to be in charge of deciding which occurrences it's going to transform into experiences and which are not going to be experiences, and they're just going to be useful in the radar, but they're going to be blocked from experience. Yes, but blocking occurrences is not equal to repressing, because we have to accept occurrences, psychically speaking. Like, before they become materialized, we need to accept them first and then block them. It is as if we are putting the record on, playing it, and be like, okay, I don't think I don't think I want to experience that occurrence. I don't want to experience it. I'm going to block it. But I accepted it prior. I accepted the possibility. So I think for me, this has been a big resource. Very, very big resource. Accepting a possibility in the abstraction area, and then deciding that I don't want that to become an experience. And I just leave it there, because it is as if I am interacting with the collective field. I'm not in charge of that. It is the collective field, the one that is going to decide if an occurrence takes place or not. When we're not talking about the personal area, when we're talking about the personal area, I have more say in things. But when we're talking about other things that include other areas that are not personal, then of course it is the unified field, the one that's going to decide. Yeah. So there's different scales to place all of this. Okay. What is the like? She went through very briefly with like the concept of psychic structure. Psychic structure has to do with everything that happens from the ionosphere to the magma. So it's not just about the member of the species. Okay, it is the flow of signals that the planet is receiving from the sun. All the radiation that the third orbital is receiving from the sun. Okay, that is what the psychic structure deals with. So it's many different scales. Okay. What is morality? It is a structure that's going to say this occurrence is going to work good with the radar, but it's not going to be very good for the preference. Okay, so I keep it on the radar, but I block it. I block it in the ionosphere before it becomes materialized. Okay. So she says here, if we all became solar consciousness from one day to the next, all of these destructive fifth dimensional observers become only observers and not participants. Because in order to be participating inside the structure with the solar consciousness included, the quality of improvement of the third dimension needs to be activated. There needs to be an active quality of improvement of the third dimension. Ah, that's so refreshing. Hopefully, hopefully that's what's happening. I mean, maybe we don't see it like as clearly yet, but I think that if we look closely, we can see little sprouts of that. Anybody want to say anything?
Yeah, Denise, about page 7, what do you mean, or what does Ale mean by searching, destroying by the fifth dimension?
Okay. The connection between day 118 and 119. This has to do with motivating the integration of this unit of memory of the third dimension to the antenna of the universe. Why? Because 118, we're talking about the last level of densification, and 119, we're talking about the administration of the most basic, like the part that begins materialization, which is the consciousness of the hydrogen. The consciousness of the hydrogen is going to be the interface between matter and antimatter. So that's why she says this integration between the antenna of the member of the species and the antenna of the member of the universe. And they need to be able to be reading each other, because if not, this is gonna operate in a destructive way. Okay. Liberty will always be absolute and present in the imaginary area. The thing is that if it doesn't find resistance to enter the third dimension, it's going to break everything. Because if it doesn't find a barrier, it is its founding nature. Yeah. Okay. Back to the hydrogen bridge, day 119 to 148, which is where we are at right now. Let me double check which one it is specifically. What is it? I'm lost on the date. Yeah, 128. So we're on the space number 10 of the promise. Okay, hydrogen is on level 1, column 1, and it is the most reactive element because it bonds with everything. So what she says, okay, hydrogen is the interface between primary unfoldment and secondary unfoldment. Every star is going to have its own membrane between matter and antimatter. The thing is that whether the quality of the code is good or not, if there's a good quality of the code, then it's going to be financed. If it's adding novelties constantly, it's going to be financed. But if it's repeating and repeating and repeating, it's going to stop to be financed, because in the subatomic scale needs to be entertained and it doesn't like repetitions. So why is it so important, this part of just leaving the memories with the function of anchoring us to existence, but not with the function of identifying with the past or using it as a reference. Because if the sun becomes fully charged with consciousnesses that are fully lodged in the memories, more lodged in the memories than in the antennas, then the stars begin to die because they are no longer financed. Yeah. So why does this happen? Why does a star get filled with particles that are more identified with the memories than with the antenna? Because the code has been trespassed. So that is like the challenge. Then Ale says, people call hydrogen fuel. I call it client. She says, my task as a solar consciousness is to construct a membrane between matter and antimatter of such quality, of such amazing quality, that any hydrogen is going to want to practice it. Like everybody's going to want to come here. It's going to be so good. That's what she's saying. Like, I want to achieve a quality of the codification that it's brilliant as a solar consciousness. We're not talking about the member of the species, okay? We're talking about the solar consciousness, because a member of the species cannot do this. And she's talking from her scope also. But if the codification is so amazing, everybody from the universe is gonna want to come here. Okay. So people talk about the hydrogen as a source of energy socially, and Ale takes it as a source of transfer. Yes, transfer between what's in the abstraction and the principle of materialization, which is hydrogen. A traduction between abstraction and the beginning of the materialization. Okay. Organezon is on the same column of helium, but on the last. Okay, so helium is on the same column, but on the first level, and organezon is on the last level, on the same column. So helium is fulfilling a function, a function of administration in that column, and it's directly on top of the organezon, which is the collective octave or the octave of the context. Another really interesting thing she did with the table here. I'm gonna put the table here so we can see it here. She said, from hydrogen all the way to organezon, what do we see here? She's like, we are looking at a big barra cual, from hydrogen to organezon. Yeah. So what she says is, the function of this barra cual is going to be something like, which occurrence did I not take note of before I projected myself inside that field? Okay, because, a hydrogen is a fraction of consciousness of the source. Hydrogen is a fraction of consciousness of the source, but it has no contact with other fractions of the source. So that fraction of consciousness, that little hydrogen, which is a fraction of consciousness of the source, interprets the rest of totality as a repetition of itself, because it has no contact with other fractions. Okay, so here she presented an example. Let's say that a little drop of the ocean identifies itself as the ocean. Yes, of course it's the ocean, but it is a fraction of the ocean that is part of the ocean. Okay, now let's think about that little drop in the ocean, and somebody put drops of lemon around that drop of ocean. All around the little drop, there was drops of lemon around it. So that little drop of ocean is going to be interpreting that the whole ocean is made out of lemon. The ocean is lemon flavored because I have lemon drops around me. So this is like a really sweet analogy. When a little member of the species has all these disturbances in its antenna, and it interprets the whole universe from the human perspective. So there is no way that you can convince that little drop of ocean, you cannot convince it that the ocean is not made out of lemon. Why? Because it is not dissociated from the source. So what if there's a particle that is not separated consciously from the source, then it's going to perceive totality as a projection of itself. Okay? So that is why we have been working so much with the situation of me and the other who is not me. It is like the recovery and trying to connect with other fractions of consciousnesses of the source that are so that I'm just not projecting myself I'm not projecting totality as if it was just a repetition of myself. No, I am sharing a space with many other occurrences. Because the natural tendency is to project myself onto the other, and the reason for this is to not have a sequenced, properly constructed concept of the primary unfoldment. Okay, so when a particle in the source becomes conscious of itself, it interacts with nothingness itself to obtain an independent space, and that's when we can begin to talk about the secondary unfoldment, okay? But this particle never loses contact, like it is not like it doesn't have access to the source anymore. No, there's an unfoldment. So when there's the separation, the source comes to be this quantum computer that is going to be connecting this particle that separated itself from the source with the rest of totality. Okay. So here she talks about JavaScript and the promises. This is like really interesting. JavaScript and the promises. I'm going to go back to the document. Marlene, to your question, I think I explained it quite well. So maybe if you listen to the recording and if you still have the question after the recording, then we can talk a lot more about it, okay? Okay, so JavaScript and the promises. Here she starts talking about how in 2022 she began to study programming, and before she began to study, she mapped out several languages to decide which language she wanted to learn. And what she decided she wanted to learn was JavaScript. JavaScript is the language of the browser, of the internet browser, of the internet, of the web pages. And it is the language that is behind the capacity for the browser to provide the user what the user is requesting. So the thing is that we have the browser and we have the petition, and then we have all of the web. So what we see in the screen? What do we see in the screen? We see a fraction of the web, whatever our request was. So the program behind all of this mechanism is it's called JavaScript. So because the program needs to be prepared for all the possibilities of all of the things that the user is going to be asking for. Okay, so that the code that's going to be behind of all of that has to be prepared for what the user is asking. So there is a structure within the program, there is a structure in the codification that is prepared to receive an answer when it arrives. There is a preparation of a structure that is ready to receive something that hasn't come yet, but it's ready to receive it, okay? So she's saying that for us, that would be the conceptual logic. All of this preparation that we have been working with and construction of concepts is for that reason. We have been preparing a space for all of the things that are going to come later. All of the answers that we have been asking for. But we need to have a structure that is prepared to receive those answers. Okay. So JavaScript not only manages data, it also organizes the data and puts it in a format that is consumable by the easily consumed by the user. Okay, so it does all of these things. Now, I didn't know about this until now, until this emission, and she explains why she named the 30 steps of the Toganeson, she named them promises, because in the language of JavaScript, a promise is a structure that represents a result that has not arrived yet. In JavaScript, a promise is used when the browser asks for data to the server and it has to wait for the answer. The promise allows a program to remain in execution, and it defines what to do with the data when the data arrives. And it's also prepared for troubleshooting. Okay, so that is the reason why Alejandra named the 30 steps of the Toganeson the promise. Because it is a structure that is going to be prepared to receive answers from the antimatter. It's going to be allowing the program that is being executed to continue to be executed. And it's going to be deciding what to do with the data when it arrives. It's going to be codifying that data so that it is consumable by the last user. And it's going to be in charge of the troubleshooting and the communication of all the errors and improvements in the transfer and in the codification. Okay. Oh, okay. So let's say she mentions Excel. The program Excel is a program where we deal with data, we deal with dates, we deal with a lot of codes and like formulas, and like it is not very user friendly. We have to learn the language of Excel to actually navigate it. And she says, okay, if we look at the table, let's go back to the table. We can relate the Xenon to the Excel, which is like, we can see that it's like in the middle, right? In the middle. Excel, which is an interface that allows us to organize all the data, but it's still very technical. And we can relate the PDF to the Organeson, which is like the PDF is it has all the format, like pretty colors and everything that we are looking at here, that it is like more easily, it is easier for the final user to interact with. Okay. So she relates those two things there. So Organeson would be like the format in which reality needs the response to be in, the format that the reality or the field needs something from me. Okay, so there are like different levels of codification, because if there's a demand for the context, maybe I have an answer, but I need to codify it in a way that it's consumable by the part of the last user. Now, what's Toganeson? Toganeson is going to be related to the capacity to be able to respond in a specific format. So all of the promises in line 1 have to do with the structure that I am creating in the imaginary area to receive all of the answers from the primary unfoldment. It is a structure that I am creating in the imaginary area to receive all of the answers from the primary unfoldment. All of the answers are going to be there. Okay. So Oganesón has a specific format, and I need to be able to respond to the Oganesón in a specific format. But Toganesón is going to be enabling that capacity from level 1, from that membrane, because that membrane is the one that has the connection to the source of the answers, or of the source of the capacity to respond. So I have all of the answers in that level 1, but I don't need all of the answers all at once, in the same way that I don't need all of the web in my computer all at once. I need a fraction of the web according to the task that I am resolving in the moment that I am resolving it. Same with existence, same with my gravitational projection, where I'm going to know that there is an infrastructure in antimatter that has all the answers, but I want to have that base 21, which is my capacity to respond in real time with the format that the Oganesón is demanding in real time. Yeah? That would be Toganesón. Now, that capacity to respond, before we call it base 21. Te Oganesón. Base 21. Before we would call base 21, we would relate it to orbital 1 and 2, or capacity to respond. It is as if we used orbitals 1 and 2 to respond in a specific moment because we were creating the concepts. Now, that capacity to respond is going to come directly on base 30, which is third orbital in the sun. So we're not going to be using the memories of the first and second orbital to create our capacity to respond. It's going to be directly based on base 30. Only a solar consciousness can do this. We all have solar consciousness, but not all of us have it connected at a neurological scale because we have huge interferences in the code. Okay? Okay, so base 30 is the only one that is going to allow me to leave the fourth cardinality in open. What does that mean? To leave the fourth cardinality open? It means that I don't have to respond immediately to a demand. Why? Because I'm going to stop. I'm going to examine the demand before I feel pressured to respond to that demand. And that is the area of the dilemma. The area of the dilemma is not in charge of solving a problem. It is a space where I allow the problem to expand itself so that I can see it, so that I can later solve the problem and see if I'm going to respond or not. Okay? But if I am using the area of the dilemma, I am not forced to respond, I'm not pressured to respond, and I am able to create an answer that is my own. I am not taking, because if I'm pressured to respond and I want to respond quickly to something that I'm not prepared to respond to, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull from the memory to respond to something, instead of pulling from the antenna and creating something new, something that is my own, constructing an answer that is going to be my own response to a specific demand of the context. So I think that's really useful as well, this refreshment of the area of the dilemma. So everything that we are doing has to do with an anticipatory system. Okay. She mentions that when Garnier publishes the law of the unfolding of the time, it was on a magazine called Anticipatory Systems. Okay. This is just like a side note, not related to what we're talking about. So to use the consciousness at the scale of the hydrogen, I have to previously have worked with very, very properly in the differentiation of primary and secondary unfoldment. Because if I'm not recognizing the primary unfoldment, I have nowhere to pull solutions or answers from. Okay, so if I am aware that if we're aware that we have this infrastructure in the level 1 of the table where there is a reception of all of the answers, I'm not gonna wanna like force all of the I'm not gonna need the content of the answers. I'm not gonna be forcing the answers, because I'm gonna know that the answers are gonna come depending on what the real time is demanding. I'm going to receive the content of the answer when it's needed in real time, when reality needs it, when it's necessary for me to come into contact with that. So, but those contents are not going to be in the memories. They're going to be in the particular antennas. Okay, so we have this pushing and pushing and training for us to stop pulling from the memories and start pulling from the antenna. Okay. Okay, so if I have this fifth dimensional observer that is active, and we are constructing this abstract infrastructure, multidimensional infrastructure, when we are trying to interact with the third dimension, I need to be first an observer of that scale. And then when I decide to participate, I need to be adjusting myself to the parameters of that scale. Yes, because with this formation, if I don't adjust myself to the parameters or the codification of that scale, everything I do or say is going to be received as an attack or as an imposition. Okay. So yeah, we are the ones that need to enter into those boxes. We cannot be asking for other people to come. It is impossible. They don't reach. But we can construct our way down to the construct this little stairs and scaffolding to reach that other person. Sometimes I'm not going to be able to reach, then that's okay. Then I recognize that I don't reach. Whatever I don't reach, I have to be okay with it, because I have to be working inside my scope all the time. And so if I find a limit, I have to respect it. I be careful, if I get frustrated, if I enter self-rejection, if I don't like the margin of error, all of those things. No, respect it. It is the best thing you can do. Your central nervous system is going to be so chill if you do that. And here she mentions that it is hard for her to interact with the third dimension because instead of this situation of transparency, approaching the third dimension with this premise of transparency, it's hard to do because in the third dimension, what is operative is the not transparency, but encryption. Okay, they talk to encrypt, not to clarify. And here what we're trying to do is the complete opposite. Okay, we are trying to decrypt, to decodify, not codify. So she's saying that it's like really hard. But that, she's working on that. Okay, now we jump into another point that is connected with this manipulation of the solar code that it wasn't as clear for me as it was in this program. And it has to do with in Event 71, Alejandra, I don't think it was the first time she played it, but for me it was new. She played a song which is the soundtrack of the movie 1492, The Conquest of Paradise. It's a movie, and the soundtrack of the movie is this song, okay? From Vangelis. Vangelis is the artist. So of course she decodifies all of this, and we're talking about year 1492. That year is the SIDA year of apparatus 373. What is 373? What is like the function of that apparatus? It has to do with creating value for the third orbital. That was, or is, now with the improvements of the code, we can start using I love that apparatus, honestly. We can start using that apparatus to create value to the third orbital, because if we look around and if we go out and ask people what their understanding of the third orbital is, or the planet Earth is, they don't even know what planet they live on, probably. And this was also interfered, because Alejandra is saying that if this manipulation didn't happen, we would now be executing the conquest of paradise. If that didn't happen. And what is it that happened? Apparatus 492, because we can see it in the year. Okay, we saw the year and the apparatus. Now we're going to apparatus 492, which is the anchor of apparatus 493. What was the interference that blocked our conquest of paradise? The leap years, the leap seconds, which was a consequence of the removal of the gold standard. And the removal of the gold standard has to do with interfering the capacity to interact properly with each other. We stopped perceiving each other. We stopped recognizing each other as members of the species. So we started killing each other. So apparatus 493 was prepared so that we were able to execute that paradise, because it was prepared with the infrastructure to do that, but it was manipulated, and that incremented the level of difficulty of the challenge. So what was it? What is that infrastructure that Ale talks about that was prepared in the solar code for us to be able to execute the conquest of paradise? Okay, from the first day of July of 1971, which is year desafía of apparatus 493. The infrastructure that she's talking about is that the date and the solar day of the first 9 days of July of 1971 frequentially converge. What does that mean? 171971, the same digits in the solar day. 271971, same digits in the solar day. And we can see that from day 1 through 9 of July of 1971. This is the infrastructure that Ale says was prepared for us to begin to execute the conquest of paradise, because we previously had the preparation of apparatus 373 and creating value for the third orbital, which didn't happen. But didn't happen. We had the removal of the gold standard on the 15th of August of 1971. So the growth, this, if we translate this conflict into the third dimension and the social reality, the breach of economical growth was like completely broken, because with that interference, our antennas are not able to read each other. So the removal of the gold standard in 1971, the interference of this infrastructure, and the beginning of the insertion of the leap seconds in 1972. Okay, now she starts to talk about how from event 71, this is a whole new era for the development. It is completely new. It is as if we were like incubating and we are coming out of that. There's so many other ways to talk about that. But from event 71 and on, everything is about creating the improvement from the instruction that was received and putting into value everything that has been received, creating value for that, and to begin to create improvements based on everything that we have received. So lap from lap 8 of 1582, that is the place where we're going to be pulling the capacity to assimilate everything that has occurred in this system with all of the injections of foreign code. Lap 8, because of this, everything that we saw with the solar days of 5775 and all of that. That is like that's the structure that is gonna enable our capacity to assimilate everything that has occurred. Here she talks about another like not like warning, but like announcement. Be like, if you're still interested in taking the mystical path, like I don't recommend it. You know, it seems very nice at the beginning. It seems very like all fun and games, but it's actually a very much deeper, highly manipulative level that you're entering. So she says, what I would prefer is the responsibility of learning from the subatomic scale to the anatomic scale and not lose the reins of the flow of signals. But the thing is that if there's a person that doesn't have the itch in this level of development of consciousness at that level, there's nothing we can do. So we need to respect them. So if the person doesn't have this itch and we try to get the resource closer to them, they're gonna be hurt, because they're gonna be interpreting it as an aggression and not as a resource. So here she decodes the word herida, where we have He, which is helium. They're not using the helium as the administrative function. They don't use the helium to use the re-access to be inside the anatomical destination. So that translates into herida. Herida is wound in Spanish. Herida. They don't use the consciousness of the helium, that administrative quality of the helium, to use the re-access to be in the anatomical destination. So everything is going to be a wound. And they're going to be healing all their lives. That's why here we don't talk about healing, because healing implies that something that occurred was wrong. That's why we're talking about the ability to pull from lap 8 of 1582, the capacity to assimilate everything that has occurred, but not assigning a value as if it was wrong. No, because if we do that, we're not going to be able to capitalize it. Healing implies that what occurred was wrong. No, it wasn't wrong, because it is a capacity of growth. And if we don't accept that, then at least I have to be conscious of the fact that I am not accepting it. Wow, yeah, that's it. I think that was like 2 hours.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Right? I thought this program was
Mm,
amazing.
yeah.
A lot is falling apart.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm also curious about this 396 in the date of 23 of March this year.
Yeah.
Is it round? Is it solving with this 10 days in 1582?
1582.
So is it solving something in this year? How I cannot express my words about this because we
No,
ended.
what we are doing, it, maybe we could say that there's like an enabling or an activation of a function that is based on that
Yeah,
specific moment, not moment, but like structure. Because if we're looking at it from the solar perspective, it's not time. It's blocks of code, right?
yeah,
From our perspective, um, it has like the component of time is included. But from the solar perspective, no, it is a block of code. So for us, it's going to be translated as like an activation of a function, and that's the origin. Like our capacity to assimilate what has occurred is provided by lap 8 of 1582. And it's being enabled in this specific 444 years of distance, you know?
this destiny.
But from the solar consciousness, it's all code, blocks of code. Wow, you guys, I think that's enough. Thank you
Wow.
so much, you guys, for.
It was brilliant.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Impressive.
Really beautiful. Fantastic.
Thank you, Molly.
Really. Wow.
So clarifying, right? For me,
Oh,
it was very
completely.
clarifying.
Brilliant. It was chock-a-block loaded. So much.
Really, I
So
know it was
much.
so loaded. I need to go rest for a while. So thank you
Yeah,
so
that
much.
was
It's always a
beautiful.
pleasure to spend time with you guys and to see you. Really, thank you so much. And we'll be seeing each other next time.
You
Yeah.
bet.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Thank you
Yay.
so much. Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
very much, Sydney.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Ciao.